Let's see.
I got 40%.
Oh shit!
Like, damn. That's real, man. But you know, I'm exhausted, but I'm also truly inspired, happy to hear how well so many of you guys are doing.
I heard that.
I was with a reporter from the News Journal the other day, and we did the interview at the new center for structural equity, and in the conference room, and just on that day seeing so many programs and different things were going on, so much energy. I'm like, man, it was just, I just reflected, because the story is about Southbridge and the new Southbridge, you know, the development that's supposed to make its way through, and what do we think, and yada yada yada. But you know, so I reflected on a lot of my experiences and see how far we've come. You know what I mean? See Wolfie and Nick come in there. I don't know if you know Nick, but Nick just recently got out, maybe like a year ago, but he's at the center.
Okay.
And just to see, you know, Sadiq and Coley and all the kids, you know, different programs being coordinated, how disciplined everybody was, how, because you know, you got to keep everything coordinated because everything get a little out of control. You know what I mean? But it was so inspirational, man. And everybody was kind of, you know, caught up in the muck and immersed in the work. But I had the pleasure and privilege to just sit back and observe and absorb and or take it in. As I'm thinking about like the last 10, 11 years, man, you know, confidence and competence and everybody's kind of, you know, doing their thing. You know, there are 4 street park projects that are running out of there. You know, well, one project is not necessarily a street park, but it's a gentrification project at Riverside ran by and then there's 3 street parks, straight up street park. Street park, but a lot of the associates are involved in Ann's project as well. She's working with youth though.
Okay.
So something called Wide Park, organizing the youth to do some work around gentrification and everything that's going on at Riverside. So they putting out some TikTok video. That's hot.
I heard
the way
that.
she's doing it is like, you know what I mean? But all of these projects are running out of the center now. You know, in addition to all of the service and outreach and, you know, and everything else that they're doing. Like CIT and you know, Corey's program runs out of there. He's still at CJ, but he also runs a program out
and I
of
saw Corey in the supermarket.
Oh,
yeah, and we was kicking it, you know, and I stopped by CIT to talk to Wolf. So that to let him know that, you know, I'm dealing with formerly incarcerated veterans. You know, I've made about 4 visits to Howard Young, and it was funny. Now, I wasn't dressed like I'm dressed now, right? And they said, "Oh yeah, your attorney's here." You know, that's all right. And I'm gonna tell you, the reason that I got this job stemmed from Park. Okay, because when the first job I did for Delaware Center for Homeless Vets was street research. Because to find veterans and why they're homeless and what have you, survey and this, that, and the other. And the reports that I wrote up were, the funders liked it so much, they gave them a bunch of money. And then this grant came up, and the head of Delaware Center for Homeless Vets said, we gotta have Patrice is the guru outreach. We gotta have them. You know? And that's how I got the job. You know, because I was house tech. I was house manager for ECHD. He said, "Nah, man, that's over. That's over. We gotta get somebody else to do that. We gotta get you out on the street." And so that's,
I would love to read, if it's public, you know, the reports are public or whatever. You know, I would love to check that out.
Okay.
Definitely.
Yeah, because I have them all in the emails.
Okay.
I did weekly reports when I was on the project.
Okay.
Yeah, I did weekly reports, and they loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they loved it. It's just been. It's been rewarding.
Yes.
Because I've seen, you know, like I got a guy now that I met with in prison. He got out, had no place to go. We housed him. And, well, actually 2 guys. One, I actually am signing up for computer coding. And the other one, he wants to be a flagger, this, that, and the other. And I told him, whatever you want to do, I'll get you the training for.
Right.
So,
That's what's up, man. See, this is what I'm saying. This is inspirational. I mean, you guys, just mobilizing, folk. And, and I think it's always important for leadership to be reminded, of how involved folk who are really from the neighborhoods are. I mean, with their own people, for their people. So, but a lot of good stuff, man. A lot of stuff that's been going on.
I don't have my theme song today.
Okay,
so I'm just going to kind of wing it and get this set up. This be okay.
They say falling in love is wonderful. They say
WHGE 95.3 FM, the education station. It's time for the Open Eye. For those of us that indulge in intellectual violence, we don't do so for the sake of ego-diddling or mental masturbation. We do so because the chains of oppression are deep and difficult to remove. Good morning, my children of the sun. Welcome to the Open Eye. I'm your third eye optometrist, Patrice Gibbs, ready to set you off. I'm hoping you're going to learn something. Matter of fact, ring the bell, sucker, school's in. That's right. Let me tell you what's going on. First of all, let me tell you this. Our computer is down today. Hey, this is live radio. Things happen. Okay? Our computer is down today, so you didn't hear my theme song, but I'm sure you're okay with that. You couldn't wait to get on the radio or on the Facebook live feed and catch your third eye optometrist on the Open Eye. Couple of little announcements. Faith Harvest, Blessed Assurance, and New Life Ministries are giving out fresh quality food today at 2205 Lancaster Avenue, right here in Wilmington. That's going to be from 10 to 2. So if you want to get some fresh food, you're in need, that's the place to go. Faith Harvest and Blessed Assurance and New Life Ministries, 2205 Lancaster Avenue, from 10 to 2 today. Also, today, starting at 2 o'clock, if you're a WHGE listener, I'm sure you heard my tribute program last night to Clifford Brown. I got a lot of kudos from that, especially from our illustrious leader, Harvey Carey, who said that I almost made him cry. He didn't know there was so much to know about our favorite son, Clifford Brown. This is the 65th anniversary of his tragic death. Clifford only lived to be 25. He died in a car accident. Today at Kirkwood Park, 11th and Kirkwood, there will be a special memorial concert honoring the great Clifford Brown. That will start at 2 o'clock. At 2 o'clock, it will start with recorded music that will be by Clifford Brown. From 3 to 4, there will be open mic, African drumming, spoken word, poetry, and personal reflections. From 4 to 6, the memorial concert featuring Tony Big Cat Smith and friends. Tony Smith on trumpet, the great Larry Williams on tenor sax, Bill Diltz on Hammond B3 organ, and my man Aaron Walker on the drums. Aaron Walker has been compared to some of the greatest drummers out there in the history of jazz, Max Roach and Elvin Jones. And look, you want to get over that. And if you're a musician, you want to sit in, bring your axe. If you don't want to know where the axe is, leave it home. Don't bother. This is the Open Eye. Today, I have a very special guest on the air with me. And yes, I will be joined by my partner in consciousness, Nsoromma. But I want to welcome a gentleman that I consider my brother, my friend, and my teacher.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Payne. Welcome to the Open Eye, Dr. Payne.
Thank you, Mr. Gibbs. It's a pleasure to be with you.
All right. Been looking forward to getting you on the air. Probably since I've been on, it's been a couple of years, but I know you're a busy man and what have you, and I know there's a lot going on that we are going to talk about. That's for sure. You know, it's the first thing I got to bring up is Juneteenth.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, it's a tragedy. The bar, well, wait a minute, that's not where I wanted to go. I wanted to go with Juneteenth. Okay, we have been celebrating Juneteenth since 1980. That's when they started really, and they were celebrating it before in Galveston, Texas. They've been celebrating it for probably a century.
Right.
You know, but since 1980, I would say it's spread throughout the country.
Right.
And we've been celebrating Juneteenth. I'm not big on holidays that are, how can I say, are pushed by the government, or we didn't ask for a Juneteenth holiday. We asked for police reform, and they gave us Juneteenth. That's like, I'm not even sure how to put this. That's like asking for an apple, and somebody chews up the apple and spits it out and say, hey, have some applesauce. And go to hell. And that's that's where I'm at with that. I don't know if you have some different feelings. I know some people are like, well, it's a good thing, it's a start. Okay, well, we've been starting things for like 400 years. Okay, so what are your thoughts on Juneteenth?
Yeah, great question. And obviously, this is a robust conversation that's taking place in the neighborhoods, particularly black neighborhoods all across the country. This is the alternative narrative that I think is easily dismissed and or not enough attention paid. And then what we see in terms of the conversation represented more so in the mainstream is really a misrepresentation of what most black people feel about this now federal holiday. Let me also just back up for a second and just say really quickly, thank you once again for having me on your show. I also want to thank you for that, for that humbling introduction. But I also want you and your viewers to know how much you mean to me, and that you played an integral role, and definitely the first project, the foundation. You are a founding member, the Street Part Movement or the Wilmington Street Part Program, which we'll probably talk about later. But more important than that, you are a mentor and teacher to me. You are also, my OG in many respects in terms of philosophically, ideologically, in terms of understanding black culture more broadly, and definitely black culture and the legacy of it in Wilmington. And I always appreciate our marathon conversations.
Yes, sir.
Because when you get to talking, I get to listening and I get to learning.
Thank you.
And so I just want you and the viewers to know how much you meant to me and what you've contributed just to my lived experience in Delaware. But with regard to Juneteenth, I think, like you said, we wanted police reform. We wanted, to be honest with you, reparations. That's really the dominant conversation that's taking place right now. And we need more folk inside neighborhoods and communities, particularly black neighborhoods, particularly those black Americans descended of the slave South, really making an argument for the reparations that have been owed. It's way overdue. That really will help with the kind of change and transformation that we're all seeking, right? Because when we get our reparations, Police reform, well, we don't have to think about police, we can think about it very differently. We can think about schools very differently, and our approach to improving these systems, right? As long as we're beholden, and as long as we are forced into inequality and beholden to, an establishment that's not interested in our liberation, as long as we're within that context, it will always be difficult to obtain the kind of change that we need and deserve. And reparation, it allows us to create our own reality. And in that new reality, we get to set the rules and create the parameters and the boundaries and the goals and the priorities in ways that serve us. And that's up to and including policing, right? So I think with the discussion that's been taking place with regard to Juneteenth, it has also conveniently covered over or found a way to now, squash, I think, that fiery discussion of reparations that's still taking place. One last thought. I also think, we've been hearing a lot about critical race theory, and that theory has been founded by a guy by the name of Derek Bell. Right? He's the founder of it, right? And he's a radical, critical, legal scholar that really put it on the line. And a lot of folk don't really understand the legacy of critical race theory in the ways that it ultimately deserves, because it's a big and broad theory, and unless you really get inside it, and it may be difficult to fully grasp. So I'm a critical race scholar, and I teach it. I'm at the University of Delaware. But with that said, one of the most famous concepts that undergird this theory, right, is his argument about racial symbolism. That's Derek Bell. That's critical race theory. That's who's advancing that argument. Right? And he's making and definitely in his classic book, Faces at the Bottom of the Well, which is a New York Times seller that comes out in '92, which is all about critical race theory. He's making that argument, particularly in that book, I think in relation to Martin Luther King Jr. and it being a national holiday. And he's making this argument about racial symbolisms and how that's a clever ploy, strategy by the establishment, right, to create what critical race scholar Michelle Alexander also argues, right? So what's the purpose of racial symbolism, right? Well, the establishment is more invested in what she describes as the impression of change, right? The oppression of it, right? At the end of the day, the economy is organized around anti-blackness. It is organized around an economic outgroup. That group primarily has always been Black Americans descended of the slave South. That specific racial ethnic group. That is our purpose. That is our function, right? So when you think about it from that perspective, right? Derek Bell says when you think about it from that perspective, right, and you humble yourself to what is actually going on, right, and it's not until you get into that space will you be able to really offer an intervention that has any shot at dealing with the problem, right? Our inequality, our bottom castness, our plight with structural violence, right? That is part of, he says, Derek Bell says, that's permanent and required. Economic poverty, Ruth Gilmore, another critical race scholar, also argues, and I'm quoting, poverty is required. And it's not until you get your head wrapped around that that you are the dinner. And if privilege is to be ensured, right, to folk like me included, right, I'm part of a hypocrisy, right, but if privilege is to be bestowed within this socioeconomic reality, then it requires an outgroup. And that's why everybody's kind of falling apart in media and all of that, you know, on the right and on the left, because this idea, right, is sticking. It's a very powerful idea, thought, ideology, theory, right? And it's one of the best theories, right? It's a theory that's so spot on, and it's one of the best theories to clarify or explain what is actually going on in our reality. And it's hard to debunk. That's why it's become so frustrating. You know, you can't just easily dismiss it because you got to dismiss it with an empirical argument, right? You know, and the data in those other arguments they don't quite add up, right? In the ways that when you get underneath this argument.
You know, that's something, because when you say you have to argue, you have to debate it from an empirical stance. The thing is, the critics don't have the tools to argue it from that position.
Yes,
and, you know,
yes,
and it's so crazy that so many people that are critical of it, of critical race theory, actually have no idea what it is. That is so crazy to me. And I saw this black woman, you know, come to find out that she's, you know, a black conservative, a rising star in the Republican Party.
Wow.
And she had no idea what critical race theory is. On top of which, she was dishonest, because when she got on Roland Martin's show and said that her daughter recorded her daughter in elementary school recorded her teacher teaching critical race theory. Well, okay, first of all, what you need to know is that critical race theory is not taught in elementary school. It's taught on a graduate level. It's taught on a college graduate level. You know, and she's yes, they were. They were teaching. No, they were not.
Well, sometimes it's not so yes, what you're seeing in the media in terms of critical race theory and schools is a fierce misrepresentation. Absolutely. Right? Critical race theory, by and large, is not taught in public schools. Right? And that's across the country. That's black, white, and otherwise in terms of the communities. Right? It's not, for the most part, public schools, particularly those black public schools. Right? We teach to the test. I will say, though, in all fairness, you do have instances, particularly of private schools, right? And these are well-funded, well-resourced, usually private schools that may have a liberal wing or a liberal set of educators that may teach middle schoolers or high schools critical race theory. That is rare. That's generally in the more privileged schools. And I actually think, wow, that is pretty interesting, right? But it's not necessarily occurring at the public level as much as we think. Now, it is occurring at the public level in greater numbers in the university, right? Because you have private universities, kind of the same thing, with regard to secondary and primary schooling. You have private, you have public, you have charter, which is really public, but a different kind of public, right? And everything else. Same thing, the university system more or less is set up in the same way. You have private institutions, right, and then you have public institutions. Some of the public institutions are really good. Some of the public institutions are really designed for poor black adults or working adults, right? And you have community colleges and you have all of that. I say like to say this, at the public level, right, critical race theory is probably being taught at the university level across private and public, right? But states can respond more easily to the public institutions, right? Because the public institutions get state funding as well, right? So they now can declare and say and hold on, with regard to your theory. And you've seen instances like this around the country. So I think, again, what you're seeing on TV, particularly media, misrepresentation. Most folk don't actually know what critical race theory means, right? And that's including black people too, right? Some of the arguments that I'm hearing in different podcasts, right? And it is a very difficult theory to grasp, particularly because it's really coming out of the academy, is coming out of very theoretical, rich discussion. But if anyone want to know what it means, Derek Bell is saying a few things. But in short, the economy is organized around anti-blackness. The target group, economic outgroup, is black Americans. This is very important. Black Americans descended of the slave South. That's the targeted group, right? That has always been our role. I didn't say it, Derek Bell said it. Right? No matter how much you think or aspire or hope or feel like you can do it, no matter how hard you work, Derek Bell said, Harvard a legal scholar. I didn't say I agree though, right? No matter how hard you work, the data has never been born or borne out that in and of itself is going to change, right? The massive inequality that we have experienced. There never has been a time where black Americans descended of the slave South in large mass ever experienced quality opportunity, schooling, jobs, or otherwise. We don't have one instance of it as a people in 400 years.
Wow. Yeah.
This is Derek Bell, not me. The other painful thing that he's saying, right, is right, even though we're the bottom caste and we are required to be in this situation in perpetuity. He says required. He says it's permanent. Right? He says, but he says something else is even more painful. He says, I didn't say it, he did. He said at the end of the day, most folk, he's speaking mainly to white folk, but other folk too, outside of this group. All they're going to do is stand on the sidelines and watch it happen. And still want the opportunity to be framed as a moral and good person. Even if they are aware, most aren't, including us.
Right. Yeah.
Most of us suffer from false consciousness. We want to believe what we see on CNN. We want to believe what we see in the media. We want to believe, right? And most of us, due to just the grind of day-to-day work, it's hard to sit there and process and really understand it all, right? And not to mention, we may have children or a family, and we want them to live this dream.
Right.
But at the end of the day, right, we would rather believe a lie. That's a form of coping. And we're all socialized. Remember what them stories around Santa Claus and the Easter egg, and, right? That's just putting you in a spell, right? Yeah. And then we live in a society that's highly performative, right? And all war cultures, which we are, have to be performative. Hey, how you doing? How you doing? Right? When we are standing around obvious forms and levels of injustice, the most humane thing you would do is say, all business stops until all are served. But you have to contort yourself in ways that actually work against your own morality and humanity to have some semblance, right, of a lived experience in this world. And that's what we talk about on the street part team. Right. That's what we chop it up with. But let me stop though. I get to go. And
all right. That's all good, bro. You know. First of all, let me say good morning to my partner in consciousness, Nsoromma. Nsoromma, let me introduce you to Dr. Payne.
Nice to meet you,
Dr.
Payne.
Absolutely.
Yes,
I watch y'all every
What's up,
Saturday.
world? What's up?
All right. How you doing, Nsoromma?
Cool, man. Cool.
Right.
I heard y'all coming in, man.
I heard that.
Y'all sound real good, man.
Thank you, bro.
Really, you know what I'm saying?
Yes,
especially you, Doc. I'm telling you, I appreciate you being here too.
Thank you,
Also, you know.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Keep going. Keep going.
Hey. Now, to support what you said, especially about economics, it's something that, this is a saying that I got from my great Uncle Richard.
Yes, sir.
For those of you who don't know, Uncle Richard was my surrogate grandfather. I learned a lot from him.
Sure.
Uncle Richard told me that the worst thing to a white man with a penny, I'm cleaning up Uncle Richard's language, is a black man with a nickel. Okay? That is part of the indoctrination of whites to ensure that they participate in keeping black people down. Alright? Where did lynching come from? After the Civil War, through the 60s, lynching was a big problem for us. We were being lynched, you know, the records say 4,000 people between 1865 and 1965. Okay? Those are the ones that were recorded. Okay? The people that were lynched, if you look at the photos of the black men that were lynched, okay, 80% of the time these black men were in suits and ties. Because the primary victim, the primary target of lynching
were
businessmen. Exactly.
Was there a competitor?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, and you know, even having the idea of a black man doing business and being an example to his people, this was a problem.
But
so
you have to think about that. You got to think like the doc was just saying. It wasn't the competitiveness about it. It was that you supposed to be down here.
Right.
This is where you're required to be. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes,
and they also were brainwashed also into believing that kind of thing. They just as crazy.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So, and understand what Doc is saying, he not only a doctor, he and history and history, he's a psychiatrist too.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So he understanding the brain.
Yes, indeed.
Most people don't understand the brain. And see, that's what they do. They take and go do experiments on the brain and learn everything about the brain and emotions of the brain. This is the government. You know what I'm saying? And we are that cattle, like we were saying.
Yeah.
He don't want cattle to think.
No.
He don't want cattle to know that he can eat this grass right here that he's standing on. He want to have to feed. Oh, I'm going to wait for him to put this in this thing and I'll go over there and eat. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way they got us right now in America.
Right.
We have to wake up. You know what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed.
Mentally.
And you know, it's something significant what you said. He don't want this man to know that he can eat right here.
Right. You can just bend down and eat right at your foot.
Yeah. You know, this is what made when he's a well-known example. Fred Hampton's so dangerous. And the Black Panthers. Because what the Black Panthers did was, they said, hey, guess what? See, these are the things that are needed for revolution. Shelter, clothing, education, and groceries. Alright?
I think what's needed for revolution, the main ingredient that we don't have, and they turning all our young men into, is we need warriors, man.
Yes,
You
indeed.
understand?
Oh, most
we
definitely.
need warriors.
Yes,
we
most
need
definitely.
warriors that want to stand on the front line and fight, and physical, and mental, educational. We need all of these avenues coming at them like they coming at us.
That's where. Well, let me get to why this was so dangerous.
Right.
Because if you don't have to depend on them for sustenance, okay, you have no use for them, and they cannot manipulate you, enslave you mentally, financially, and so on and so forth.
Right.
If you, and then this, like I said, this is what made a man at 21. Fred Hampton was only 21. Brilliant organizer when they murdered him. All right?
Yeah.
That's what made him so dangerous, was that he was showing his people that we do not need them to survive, for sustenance.
Not only that, Fred was smart, man.
Yeah.
He was not only for our people, he was for people, period. You understand? It's a difference. If you got a person being treated the same way and a different nationality, and they're going through the same thing, they're going to feel you. They're going to feel that pain that every human, if you're a human, supposed to feel. Because, you know, some people out there don't care about nothing. That just goes like that. You know what I'm saying? But if he was able to cross the barriers, that's what made him super dangerous. He was able to go talk to the Russians and go, yo, y'all being treated like this too. We all need to get together. That's where the Rainbow Coalition came from. You understand? And they taking the Rainbow Coalition and connecting it to this LGBTQIA, with however they do it. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that ain't something that I'm into, but I'm saying, you know what? And then they connecting it to the railroad. They using all our main meats of function to make you realize this is messed up about what you did to our people, and they making it something else.
Yeah, that's what they're doing.
Yeah, they're making it something else, and it'll be erased in a minute from history because you're hearing it this way when it was really this way, like the Crips and the Bloods. You know what I mean?
And you know what? You said something really significant right there. Right? This is something that the mainstream doesn't understand, and that they have the arrogance not to even address. Okay? I saw Bill Mayer talking about, well, you know, sometimes you just gotta let things go and this, that, and the other. But you don't understand why we are so passionate about this. It's because you've never experienced erasure. Okay? We have been erased from the history books. We have been erased from economic opportunity.
They're trying to take us right now out of the educational curriculum.
That's right.
Now, what kind of government supports that? You understand? We have to go to the source. Exactly. We have to go to the source. We have to realize where the source is. Like Doc said, the PAR program. most people, I ain't even heard about that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we have to direct people to this kind of programs so we can even enforce. We have to enforce. We have to force this on them. They're not going to go, okay,
Right.
give it to me, please.
Right.
And then
you
when
know,
they do
like you said,
say
most
that,
people don't know what the PAR program is and what PAR even means.
Right.
All right. And I'm going to shift this over to Doc. What I'm going to say is that PAR is an acronym, Participatory Action Research.
right.
And what Dr. Payne did was he took people from the population that he was studying and made them the researchers.
But not only
That's
that,
unheard of.
he paid them for their
Right.
services.
Right.
You understand?
Yes, indeed.
And inside of that, okay, once I go, okay, yo, man, can you help me? And then they go, you know, poor people willing to do anything for milk and a cookie because they poor, they hungry.
That's what,
You know what I'm saying?
And let me say this to our listeners in case you don't realize it by now. Damn it, Nsoromma do his homework. That's a damn sure. Big ups on that, brother. That's what. Dr. Payne, I want you to talk more about PAR, about participatory action research. And I hope I'm pronouncing this right. I should know it by now. Participatory action research.
Yeah.
But Dr. Payne, you're a street ethnographer.
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 Yes.
Ethnographer.
Excuse me, but my tongue gets wrapped around these crazy
Ethnographer.
Ethnographer. See, I still can't get it out. But
That sounds like
Dr.
a
Payne, if you-
slang scenario. I might have to pay for that.
So I have a PhD in social psychology, or I'm a social psychologist, and I got that 2005 at the Graduate Center, City University of New York. So Graduate Center is one of 12 colleges that make up CUNY, or the City University of New York. I then spent a year working on a public health postdoc at Rikers Island. That study was running out of Hunter College, another college in CUNY. It's another institution, and I was in there. It was a reentry program, had a participatory dimension to it as well. I would go into C-74, I think it's one of 12 jails or 14 jails on the line at Rikers Island. It's literally an island, it has its own busing system to get from one institution to another. It's literally like a small city. Right? C-74 is where the juveniles... Small plantation. C-74 where the juveniles are located, where the study ran out of. It's also the most violent facility. Youth are generally in the correction facility, in corrections. Youth or juvenile populations are generally the more violent or wild.
Oh yeah, because they don't go. They ready to go. That's where our warriors at, and they locking all of our warriors up. Some of them in there, you know, on some BS that they ain't even supposed to be there. You know what I'm saying? On some, oh, you sold a candy bar, I'm giving you 30 years. I mean, these are the traps that they have for us in place to keep us in that required position that they demand from us.
Absolutely. And then I hung out, we would work with them there, and then they would come out, and then we would follow up with them, because it's a jail. Right? It's a prison, which means you're more than likely going to be out after a few months, at least in most instances. And then, you know, most county too, jails, that's where the violent facilities are at, or the juvenile facilities.
Okay.
Adult prisons, generally things are more calm. Because there's a new set of rules, folks are going to spend a whole lot of time here. It don't mean it can't get real, but most folks are going to be respected at that point in a way that you can get away with it, and it's more unstable at the county level. But nonetheless, I did PAR. I did a lot of street PAR, do street participatory action research. I was training underneath this scholar who does PAR, but she was doing it in schools. I'm like, we got to do this on the street corners.
Right.
And I didn't really see any example of it. You know, I was going through the literature. I was, you know, knocking on all the scholars' doors. And then my doctoral advisor let me know this is your job to do. So I got 4 of my friends, and I said, hey, let's go do it. And we did a PAR project that extended from Harlem to Paterson, New Jersey. There's a highway that connects both spaces. And then we also collected data from people, from small towns in between those two cities. But we literally hit the street corners up. We went to where they sold drugs at. We went to where they did X, Y, and Z. We collected 400 surveys, and we also collected a ton of interviews. That model, that project caught some attention. Hadn't been one before it. I created Street PAR. Hadn't been anyone in the country who was doing this work, really training guys from the streets to be scholar warriors, scholar activists, really learn, survey, and interview skill sets, to collect large data sets, to analyze it, to write it up, to present it at the conferences, to put it all on your CV, to get paid for it, and then transition from those opportunities right now to do other things in school or at work. PAR is a research experience, but it's also an activism experience. So it's guys from the block, and at that time I was working with guys that were active, right? And I was trying to make the point that they too want to learn, and they too are talented, and they have an analysis, and they want to improve their communities, and they love their children, right? So I always say, send me the shooters. Send me all the bad people that you say don't want to do whatever, right? And I'm going to send you back the kings and queens that they already were. And that really was, so street PAR were a bunch of things, right? In terms of as a method and intervention, but more importantly, it was a way for these guys to restore their dignity, acquire resources, acquire skill set, and make an argument for and or on behalf of the people that they love most.
I heard that. As you had mentioned earlier, I was part of the original PAR team here in Wilmington. Okay? And just to point out what Dr. Payne was saying, most of the PAR members from that original team are active in the community, making things happen, making things turn around for their community. Okay? I myself am a job developer and employment specialist for Delaware Center for Homeless Vets, focusing primarily on formerly incarcerated veterans. Okay, I know some of my other PAR brothers and sisters are still active in the community, making things happen, such as Darryl Wolfie Chambers. As you mentioned, Corey Wright. Darryl Wolfie Chambers is the executive director of CIT.
Right. Okay. He's executive director of Center for Structural Equity. With CIT, Community Intervention Team, among several other programs, do run out of the center.
Okay.
Over there on North Tatnall Street.
Over on North Tatnall Street.
Check it out.
Yes, indeed. I've been over there to chop it up with Brother Wolf and what have you. And Corey Wright also runs his organization out of that same center. Okay, so these are people that with street experience, with justice involvement. I fortunately, luckily, did not have justice involvement. Okay, and like I said, luckily, I skimmed by that one. Okay, but I did, of course, have street experience and what have you from a very young age and what have you. And because of that, it makes you think of when I was with Cease Violence. One of the things that came up was the fact that the violence interrupters and outreach workers were all former felons. And some of the city politicians did not like that and thought that, people from universities or something should have been hired. Well, they don't have the social capital to go on the street and approach people about the violence they're involved in. And they did not really understand it. And what I did was I used FDR to break it down, which they didn't expect because they look at us in a certain way and they figure, well, he doesn't know this about history and this, that, and the other. Okay? And I told him, I said, look, FDR wanted to clean up Wall Street. So what he did was he got one of the slimiest players in the game to clean up Wall Street. And this cat that he got knew where all the bodies were buried, knew who all the players were, and he put rules and regulations on Wall Street that kept Wall Street clean, and I wouldn't say corrupt-free, but kept it clean for 50 years until Ronald Reagan came in office and changed everything. Wow. That man that he hired was Joseph Kennedy, John F. Kennedy's father. Okay, and this cat had the social capital and the understanding to know and that's what's needed out here. Wow. Is people with the experience, with the understanding of what is actually going on out here.
Yes, sir.
And I don't get it wrong. I advise you to get an education. But one of the things that I learned from Dr. Payne was when you said scholar warriors. Yes, sir. That's what we need. Yes, sir. Because what I learned was that the academic journals influence corporations and government. Okay? And if we can publish in those academic journals, we can bring our influence to bear. And that's what it's about. That's what it's about. You know, our education. People get confused on where Dr. King stood on education. Of course, you know, they had this idea that he was this great integrationist. Well, he was in favor of riding the bus without being hampered, which we still don't do, riding the subway without being able to
we
go.
had our own buses.
Yeah.
We didn't have to get on that bus. We had a black bus line.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I also worked for one.
The mentality
Mhm.
that they had
Mhm.
to go, okay, we don't want to ride our own buses. We want to get on
Right.
these white people buses.
Right.
And then get in the front or the buses. We ain't
Mhm.
going to go in the back.
Right.
We didn't even need to go get on their buses.
Right. And
You
you know what?
understand?
Yes, I understand.
So in understanding that we didn't have to mess with them. We didn't even have to
No.
do anything. We had our own everything.
Mm-hmm.
So now when it comes to understanding where they put us at in this requirement square of society,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
They locked that in already through DNA,
Mm-hmm.
through the hangings, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, Dr. Payne did say something about the what was it? Inclusion or the illusion of inclusion, something along those
Impression
lines.
of change.
The impression of change. That's it. The impression of change.
Impression of change.
Yeah.
Do
Yeah.
you really understand that?
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Well,
impression
The impression.
of change.
Right.
Think
Right.
about that.
Yeah.
We're more
Wow.
committed to the, Michelle Alexander, author of The New Jim Crow, makes this argument. That's where I first heard it at. But meaning the state or the establishment is much more committed to the impression of change, quote unquote, than actually creating any real structural change. And she's a critical race scholar. She comes out of, this philosophy or theory produced by Derek Bell, right? And she was, he was probably 2-3 times more popular than Michelle Alexander, right? And you see what his fruit, the fruit that he's born, a ton of scholars like her from this theory. What is he really arguing, though? I think this is important to share with your viewers, so your listeners. So yes, they've done some really outrageous, cruel, inhumane things, white supremacy against black folk, right? Anytime we created our busing companies, and we had several, or we created these other communities, like Wilmington, North Carolina, where my mom was from, or Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? These cities were burned down, these companies, these black businesses were undermined, right? So all of this is actually what's going on, and why it's hard for us to metastasize to a level where we can just do our own thing.
Right.
They will never let that happen. First of all, we repeatedly, particularly since we were released from slavery, but even before then, to do our own thing. Many examples of us doing our own thing, right? But again, according to critical race theory, we are required to be out. It's not until parents, leadership at the local level, black folk, really get, and this is what Derek Bell says, really get to a place where you accept what's going on. You want to believe the illusion or false consciousness. That all you got to do is get together and we can put our stuff and then we can work real hard. Okay, when has that ever worked? When? Right? Derek Bell says that. And they will never let that happen. But instead of accepting that, quote unquote, he says, no, we want to tell the next generation of kids, all you got to do is work hard and you're going to be just like you see that person on TV. Right? What is Derek Bell also saying? Why are they working so hard to sabotage us every generation? That is what's going on. To structurally sabotage us every generation. Why is that plan always in effect every generation? What functionality does it have? Let's get out of our emotions for a second. Let's be scholars. What purpose does it have? Because it does have a function. You get caught up with the white guy that says, I hate you, and call you an N-word, and act ignorant and all of that. And he's a problem too, right? That kind of white person, a version of white supremacy. But that's not, I think there's something else you need to really be concerned about. Right? He's saying at the end of the day, the value that is produced within the currency, right, the value, right, that is captured by the economy, that value, right, can only be real, right, with us out of the picture. Put another way, the day that we're able to figure it out, how to get your own businesses and get your own banks and amass all of this wealth and get all of this money and everything, because all you gotta do is just work hard, right? Never's worked before. Trust me, our little babies are working hard, right? That's another discussion, right? That's another. We've abandoned them, and most parents, and I would argue even black leadership, are just afraid and really don't know. But as opposed to say that, right, we're going to devour and or eat our young, as our philosophy to deal with these problems, right? Well, let me tell you what Derek Bell and critical race theory is saying. They're saying, right, that at the end of the day, when that happens, when we figure it all out and we just out of sheer will and hard work and just amass all of this damn, resources, when we figure that out, that in and of itself will destroy the economy. And I mean literally.
Of course.
Why, right? Well, this is, and I'll end here with this point. Well, this is what we said in the most recent, and if it's, I'll end here, but I do want to talk about the PAR program and what we at and what's been going on. But one of the things we said in the last training was this. Why? Well, let's think about it like this. I want to only work with the shooters, right? So when there are too many bosses, what I said in the workshop, when there's too much cocaine and there's too many bosses in the neighborhood, well, what happens to the cocaine? Oh, then they get it. Oh, okay, I get it. I get what you're saying. Because before then it was a little complicated. But now it's super clear about what's going on. There's too much coke and dope in the neighborhood and too many bosses. Well, then the value of the coke and dope drops. Everybody around here can't sell drugs no matter how hard you want to, no matter how hard you want to work, no matter how talented you are. The market must be streamlined. That means you are out. And if you got a problem with that, that means we're going to make sure you out. Because we got to maintain the value. Well, think about any aspect of the economy with that principle in mind. For the value for $1 million to be real, that means you can't have it.
Everybody.
Because if you got the million and I got the million and you got the million, that means the million ain't worth nothing. It only worth something when I got it, and maybe you got 100,000 and you got 20. That's how value is created in the economy itself. This level of analysis, oftentimes, and I say this with love, is beyond. Right? And it's killing our kids. It's beyond the parents. It's beyond our local black leaders. It's beyond all the people that say they care. Right? They have great, and Derek Bell said this is not me, great difficulty understanding this basic principle. And it's not until this basic principle is absorbed, understood, and transformed into change, right, that we're going to see anything be different out here. So that's what we're waiting for. Awareness. Awareness.
And what I've learned and what I've seen, that a lot of our black kids and even black adults, you know what I mean, don't really understand economy. And how the economy works and how money, I mean, we were never taught about banking and investing when you were 5 and 6. Like, you understand? So we already are losing from in the economy game. But then they turn around, they throw the Air Jordans on TV, they throw the race cars, they throw all the things that make our brain want to spend our hard-earned, should be invested currency. You know what I'm saying? And that's right. And that's like serious too. That's all part of that requirement.
And let me go one further with that, okay? Because the propaganda convinces us that certain things are valuable, okay? For instance,
it's really not.
When it's really not. For instance, who is it? Popeye's chicken. All right. They got it. Did you see? People.
Yo, I think they dropped the package in the chicken.
In the chicken, I heard that.
Yo, the chicken
ain't all of that, okay? What it is the propaganda, all right? The ideal that you got to have this.
But why it only work on blacks?
No, it don't just work on blacks.
No, the majority is
no.
That line that you look at,
that propaganda
around the corner with
black people. But let's go to the Apple store when the new Apple phone comes out.
but that's a different kind of.
Yeah, but
That's
the
a
propaganda and the technique is the same. Because what they're doing is they give them the idea that this phone is worth so much and it's something that they gotta have. And white people spend the night outside the Apple store.
Okay, but look
to
why.
get that phone.
But listen why.
Because,
but listen why.
okay.
But listen why.
Mm-hmm.
It's a difference. You're getting nothing
Mm-hmm.
for the time you're staying in line.
Right?
Okay?
Yeah.
And then the other side,
Mm-hmm.
they're getting a laptop. Something that can take their brain to another level that they can grab to become that economy that their parents taught them about.
Yeah.
You understand?
Yeah.
Their,
I understand.
their line is different, very much from the
From her
chicken
line.
line.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
You
Oh
understand?
yeah. I understand
Of
that.
course,
I understand
of
that.
course.
But what I'm saying is the propaganda
And making the line happen.
and making the line happen.
Right,
It's the same
process.
technique.
Right,
It's the same
yeah, that's
process.
all.
Now to go to what you said about valuing things, for those of you that don't understand, okay, let me tell you something. Diamonds are not that rare or valuable. Okay? Diamonds, you go over to Africa, there are diamonds just popping up out the ground. Okay? But Africans don't and are not allowed to benefit from that, okay?
That's true.
Because what they do is they make these diamonds seem rare, and your girl gotta have a diamond ring for her engagement, okay?
That's right.
It's not, like I said, the diamonds are not that rare.
You know who
They
thought
take
of
the
that?
diamonds and the golds literally off of the market to increase the value in the world.
Right.
Right. It's that plentiful in Africa. Right. Interesting. And then not to mention the colonial kinds of deals that have been struck. Right. So you have these colonial powers and/or white companies that own the countries themselves, places like South Africa or wherever. Right. I listened to Professor James Smalls about this, so I gotta give him this reference.
Yeah.
But in any event, right, a lot of the countries, but somewhere bringing in or can hold on to about 15 to 20%, he says, of the wealth, about 80% goes to the white companies. Right? And these are deals being struck with, black leadership that has
Right.
completely sold their folk out.
Right.
But that's what's going on in Africa, and it's pretty much the blueprint that's going on everywhere.
Right.
Really? You know?
Now,
And-
now, hold up. I'm gonna. Okay, good.
Good. I gotta say
you
this
got
about
your finger
Africa.
on what?
Yeah, I gotta tell you this about the African economies, okay? And this is really significant. They are only allowed to sell the raw material.
Oh God.
Okay.
Right, they can't clean it up and make
They
it look
can't-
pretty
right.
like that dime.
When the real value where the money comes in
Right.
is with the product after it's been through production. Okay, we do not understand, our African brothers, those that sell out, they do not understand that it is the production.
So when it's taken out the ground, Mr. Gibbs, where does the production take place?
The production takes place in Europe, in the islands, in America, okay?
Right.
We are not allowed to, like I said,
Did you ever see the
participate
movie
in the
Ice
production.
Blood Diamond?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Long sleeve, short sleeve.
Mm-hmm.
You get caught stealing there, cut your arms off.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
you
yeah.
get caught putting one in there.
That's still
going on right now.
That's still going on right now.
So I'm like,
And
so
that comes from
and
here.
This is American, and these are people that's just letting it keep happening.
Yes.
Keep it,
Yeah.
That's not humanity.
No,
you
no,
know what I'm saying?
no.
Yeah, they get our Me Too now.
Yeah. All of
Get
it.
our computers,
Yeah.
lithium batteries, and
We got Cobalt, right?
Cobalt,
And I
yeah.
meet them little kids in Congo, right?
Mhm.
They're in the cobalt mine, and sometimes it falls through, and the
all
kids fall in the hole.
wants make us monsters.
Yeah.
We push them in the hole, cover it up, and we go dig another hole.
Go dig it up. Yeah.
That's common.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the only way you can get your iPhone.
Yeah.
And your Apple products.
Yeah.
Like
That's
I
right.
said, all once
You gotta have
make
that
us
cobalt.
monsters, man.
Yeah.
Now,
Now, it's crazy.
I had a question for Doc. I was like,
Okay.
because the show was, this special guest.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I was saying, okay, where is Par going? What's the next move?
Great question.
You know what
Great
I'm
question.
Mm-hmm.
We started in 2009, and and in all honesty, and grateful for the support received by the city and the state, and really coming together to help create what we did in 2009. We released that study, the People's Report, 2013. It was 15 folk recruited from the from the community, formerly involved in the streets and or criminal justice system. 12 men, 3 women. And we worked on a study on violence and reentry in the East Side and South Ridge neighborhood. It was a groundbreaking study for so many different reasons, and also caught some real national attention. Well, again, thepeoplesreport.com, that's a website. You can learn more about the project there. We have a 173-page report. You can learn more about the members there as well. We have a mixtape, right? We also you can learn more about the project by checking out one of my TED Talks called Walk With Me, where we talk about this first study. But because of this study and the attention received from it, right, we received a lot of additional support from a number of different institutions, right? We are now 4 projects later, right? We just got a Center for Structural Equity, the Center for Structural Equity, which came about in summer 2020.
With the center, right? Like, is this center open to the community? Can other kids come in, or is just the members that
all kind of programs, youth programs running out of this center?
Is it like an age limit that for the youth program? Can it be adults too? What, 13 to adult? Like, where is the number that these particular people?
So there's a website, literally, it's called the Center for Structural Equity.
Okay.
I think it's CFSE.org, but nonetheless, just Google Center for Structural Equity. You can learn about all the programs, contact information. But out of it right now, 4 PAR projects, 3 of which are focused on violence. Those 2 of those projects are funded by Christiana Care Hospital. The project, there's another project, or the 4th project is ran by Dr. Ann Aviles. It's a PAR project in Riverside right now with youth, examining gentrification there. Really exciting project. They have a bunch of TikTok videos that they're about to release on their impressions of gentrification in Riverside. Keep in mind, we've expanded tremendously, right? From 15, right? We're now probably, when you count all the partners, graduate and undergraduate students, all the associates, all the affiliates of the PAR program, right? And we're trying to put this all together now, like in one document, in one data set. But we're in the ballpark of about 150 people into this program. The program, keep in mind that Pat was the first operational director of Wilmington Cease Violence. Pat was the first operational director of that program in the city. That program now is called the Community Intervention Team, right? And the CIT program, or Community Intervention Team, is housed in the Center for Structural Equity, a program that Mr. Gibbs was very involved with. Keep in mind, what is CIT? And a lot of the guys work with that project. That means anytime, homicide or gun violence or street violence takes place, one of the guys, right, we have violence interrupters, we dispatch to the community or to the hospital, or right. So we've been involved since the inception of Wilmington Cease Violence in one form or another, under one name or another, right? Organizing guys from the community, right, to respond directly and immediately to wherever gun violence is taking place. So we're the guys oftentimes off the record having the conversations between, right, the different crews or individuals, just to kind of make things even a little bit more safe.
What about the kids that, not in the violence, like that's in their house, that's on the computer, that wants to learn the computer game, that don't deal with the violent dude, that's scared of them guys? Where would they go? Also, because you saying, bring me the shooters, bring me this.
So for me, I focus with the shooters, right? Because my perspective is nobody's working with them. Not this, and again, does not mean
I don't know one's working with none of them.
Doesn't mean that other programs.
You're on point. Your program is on point because no one's working with them. Period. The shooter or the kid that want to be something. So I applaud you for just stepping up and seeing that this was needed. You know what I'm saying?
But there are a number of youth-based programs in the Center for Structural Equity as well.
Oh,
so I just want to make sure you get that in.
Because kids are scared of.
So if you stop by the center on any given day, you're going to see a ton of kids in there playing video games, or sitting in on workshops. Right. Even during the whole COVID-19 crisis.
Is it only in the city? Can the only city kids can participate? Can it be from out the city, like Georgetown, Bear, Newark? Can these kids come and participate also? How wide is your area?
So Wolf is the executive director, and he ultimately controls what happens there. But in general, to answer your question more directly,
Most likely.
most likely the center is directing its services to the most vulnerable neighborhoods in the world.
Okay.
Well, gentlemen, we are coming an hour as usual. Yeah, somebody want to call me while I'm on the air. Well, anyway, first of all, I gotta say that thank you very much, Dr. Payne, for joining us.
Thank you, God.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And, of course, I gotta say that the open eye is brought to you by the Delaware Center for Homeless Vets, the builders and founders of the Pearl Center, Delaware Center for Homeless Vets, changing veterans' lives all over Delaware. And let me say this. We need to know and understand. This is why I study history from a sociological standpoint. We need to know and understand who we are. One of the things that we seem to have forgotten is our ability to manage a state. We have forgotten that. We managed a state. Look, the ancient Egyptian, Kemetic rulers of East North Africa and what have you, they handle nation management at its best. Okay? Through science, technology, moral balance, the rulers of ancient Kemet maintained a progressive society for 3,000 years without war. That's 12 times longer than America has even existed. America is a measly 245 years old. Of that 245 years, America has been in war 230 years. Now, America is in a constant state of war, whether guns are fired or not, because they are constantly grabbing, taking, and protecting.
War culture.
War culture. War culture.
245 years old, so how we slaves for 400 years?
Well,
they don't go together.
No, it don't, because there was slavery on this land before there was even an America. Okay? Even with all its advances, okay, the ancients of Kemet will consider modern man socially barbaric and morally bankrupt. This is the open eye of Patrice Gibbs.
Nsoromma.
And our guest, Dr. Payne. And as I always tell you, destiny determines who enters your life. You decide who stays. Therefore, value those who value you, and don't treat those as a priority who treat you as an option. This is the open eye on WHGE 95.3 FM. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank y'all for that, man. No depression, for real. Nice to meet y'all, man.
Nice to meet y'all, bro.
Every week. Every week.
Yo, you know what it is. You know what it is.
Where's your
Nsoromma, Pat, yo, Dr. Payne, yo, peace out, yo. You know what I mean? Hey, yo, he's good. Hey, yo, Pat, tell him peace, you know what I mean?
We got a good show today, as usual. As usual, really want to thank our special guest, and thank you for tuning in.
Thank you,
All right. Thank you, too. All right. Peace.